Let's talk about plateaus because I speak to a lot of women who end up reaching out to us because they're in some form of plateau, oftentimes, where they maybe lost a little bit of weight, down 15, 20 pounds, and then they bump up against this wall and they feel like, oh my gosh, I just can't get below 200. I can't get below, 175 or whatever that number might be. And oftentimes, in working with clients, seeing people in everyday life, women that we speak to on a daily basis, oftentimes people become obsessed. They think it's the strategy. It's a strategy they need to change. They need to change their nutrition. They need to do this. They need to take this supplement. They have to change their workouts. They have to do more cardio. They focus in on all these adjustments and things that they need to change. And I'm here to tell you that it's often not these little nuances. Now, obviously, do they matter? Sure, but I think it's a bigger picture of why you get stuck in a plateau. And working with over 3,100 women over the last 8+ years, we've had clients who come into our program. They'll drop weight in those first couple months. Everything is rainbow and butterflies, and then they kind of hit up against this wall, and they think like, oh my gosh, we need to change everything. And it's often not a very big change. Sometimes it's very little small nuances that lead to that breakthrough. But again, here's the big thing that I've seen. It's more of a mindset versus a strategy problem. So oftentimes what gets people to change, especially the women that we work with in health and fitness, is pain. They want to run from pain. And what I mean by pain is maybe they saw a photo of themselves and they're like, oh my goodness, how did I get this bad? Or maybe it's they can't fit into their favorite pair of jeans anymore. Everything hurts. They go to a doctor and the doctor says, hey, you're pre-diabetic, or, you have high blood pressure, your cholesterol is all out of whack, or something like that, where it was like their wake up call, right? And then they are determined to fix this and not be stuck in that pain any longer than they have to. And that's not a bad thing, being motivated by pain. But what happens is women come to our program, or just women we speak to, they run from that pain and they'll see some progress. They'll see results. They really are motivated. They're determined to not be in that pain any longer. And they'll drop, 10, 20, 30 pounds, but then boom, they hit up against this wall and they're like, I can't go any further. I must change something or whatever. But what happens is when it comes to motivation, your consistency and discipline, what I see with women that we work with one-to-one in our program is your motivation shifts from pain, and you have to make the pivot to pleasure. Pain to pleasure. What I mean by this is we'll have women, and I see this in women that I speak to, that they'll drop a little bit of weight. They start to feel better. They have more energy. They can fit in their old jeans again. Their clothes can really hide their imperfections. Before, it was, you could try your darndest to hide it, but they couldn't. And so they're not as a great, like their pain threshold went from like 9 out of 10 to like 6 out of 10. They're not as much pain anymore. And they don't make this pivot to be motivated by pleasure or achievement. And they might think it's a strategy, but when we've worked with clients one-to-one and we look at their nutrition, their activity, their workouts, their sleep, their steps, when we look at all this information, when we're working to a client very intimately one-on-one, we noticed that they took their foot off the gas just a little bit. They got a little bit comfortable because their pain isn't as high as it used to be. So it's at this critical moment where you would think, oh, I bet you come in and make all these adjustments, you make all these tweaks. And it's really not. We do. Do we make adjustments? Obviously all the time. And when you get closer to your goal weight, the margin of error is less. So like these little nuances that got this original weight off, might need to make a few adjustments to get to your desired, long-term outcome. There is certainly a component of that. But what I'll tell you is it's almost reframing a woman's mind, be like, okay, you were really motivated by pain when you first came in. You're not in as much pain anymore. We have to shift this over to being more motivated by pleasure. And what do I mean by pleasure is, like we've had women who it was a dream to ever run a 5K or do a half marathon or, be able to go out and play, pickleball or go for an intense hike with their kids. You need to be motivated by that. Like, you still might not be where you want to be. You're not as much pain, but then you have to shift. Like, okay, in 6 months, I want to go for this like super long, intense hike with my kids in a town that's like, or a city that's 2 hours away from us. Or I want to sign up for a half marathon. It becomes something like that. Or you go and, it was again a fantasy just 6 months ago, but you're a size 16, you were a 20, and then you see this dress that's in your closet that's a size 8 that you haven't fit into in 20 years, but you still hold on to it. And it was mere a dream, but maybe you really center your focus in on, okay, in the next year and a half, I'm going to wear this dress. Then that would bring you a great deal of pleasure, right? It's not pain that's motivating you. It's like, oh my gosh, the world will end if I don't fit in this dress. Not really. It's more of a pleasure component, right? I'm going to fit in this dress again. So you have to make that shift. And that's why I see, and consciously, they're often not aware of it. Like, we'll come into a woman and be like, hey, in the first month, the first 6 to 8 weeks, here's what you were doing. You were getting stronger, you were focusing on this, you were tracking this, you were, prioritizing sleep, self-care. And now the last 2 weeks, you haven't dropped any weight. And here's kind of what's different in week 9 versus week 1. We can see those things. And oftentimes, like I said, it's that they took their foot off the gas a little bit. They stopped doing what allowed them to be successful in the first place. And like I said, we sometimes make those little nuances and adjustments, but it's more about reframing their goals, their motivation, what's actually going to drive them. And it's now they're not in so much pain. We got to shift that to pleasure. So with you and your fitness journey, that's truly something to think about when you hit a plateau, is ask yourself, like, are you, still putting forth the effort that you had originally did, or have you left your foot off the gas? Chances are you probably took your foot off the gas a little bit because you're not as in much pain anymore. You had a little bit of success, you saw a little progress, and then it needs to shift. The final thing I will say, right, wrong, or indifferent, with clients with us that tend to be very, very successful and get the best results and make the most progress and really take a long-term approach at this, is they do care about their physical appearance. And in our program, that's not taboo. Like, we want women to do whatever is going to make them, feel great, be confident, be this best, most powerful version of themselves. That isn't something that we shy away from. Like, if a woman tells us, like, hey, I want to look really darn good, their goals become our goals. And it's really, really important that we don't, a lot of people in fitness just ignore that. In our program, that's totally fine. And we support your mission. Whatever you're trying to accomplish is our goal. But I do see oftentimes, when you see a little bit of progress, when somebody really cares about how they look, they want to look incredible. They want to wear the clothes that they want to wear. They want to walk into a room and catch, eyes. They just want to be this most powerful, impressive physical specimen that they can be. It really does, when someone is really wired like that, it really does help them not hit those plateaus or take their foot off the gas. So again, you might sit there and say, Bo, I have, 3 little ones. I just want to be healthy and be around a long time. And I totally understand that. And that's okay. But to accomplish that and actually, live a long, healthy, happy life and make your health and fitness a priority, you need to understand, and the way to get there is caring about how you look is probably the vehicle that's going to allow these bigger goals to come to fruition. You see what I'm saying? Like, just having that as a goal, like, oh, I just want to live long. I want to be healthy for my kids. I want to see my grandkids graduate high school. That's a very powerful, powerful why. But ironically enough, that's probably not going to get you up in the morning to get a workout in at 6 a.m. That's probably not powerful enough for you to say, no to the Ben and Jerry's at 9 p.m. instead of just going to bed, right? So if you do care about your physical appearance and make that, a very important part of this, like, and saying, hey, just putting this out in the universe, I want to look damn good, and being 100% confident and convicted in that, if you have that approach, that will probably allow you to live a long, happy, healthy life, be there for your kids, your grandkids, be able to be that, grandma 80 or 90 who's like going on walks and hikes and playing pickleball and being active. You'll get that, but probably caring about how you look physically is going to be the vehicle that allows you to do that. Because without that, what I will tell you is it's just not a big enough motivation. When people have a care and they want to look really, really good, they have a better shift from the pain to the pleasure. So Something to think about, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.